We now come to the next urgent question. Sean Murray.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To ask the Secretary of State for Transport if she will make a statement on government policy on airport expansion.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I know the issue of airport expansion is something that the honourable member feels passionately about, and I would like to make clear that the press stories that have generated this urgent question are speculative, and I cannot comment upon their content. But
not the word he was.
But we do have in this country a world-class aviation sector in the UK, and the government is committed to securing the long-term future of the aviation sector in this country and recognises the benefits of connectivity it creates between the UK and the rest of the world. We have a sector that I'm incredibly proud of, and in 2022 the air transport and aerospace sectors directly provided around 240,000 jobs in the UK. Of these, just under 100,000 jobs were in aerospace, and in 2023 the air transport and aerospace sectors directly contributed around 25 billion to gross domestic product in the UK. Around 14 billion of this was from the air transport sector and around 11 billion from aerospace. But we have been clear that any airport expansion proposals would need to demonstrate that they contribute to economic growth, are compatible with the UK's legally binding climate change commitments, and meet strict environmental standards on air quality and noise pollution. There is currently no live development consent order application for a third runway at Heathrow Airport, and it is for a scheme promoter to decide on how it takes forward any development consent order application for that runway. The government would carefully consider any consent order application for the third runway at Heathrow in line with relevant planning processes. The Secretary of State is currently considering advice on Luton and Gatwick airport expansions. As these are live applications, I cannot comment on them further today. I understand the concerns of many members of the House about how airport expansion may be compatible with our climate change targets. I would like to assure you that the government has committed to delivering greener transport through sustainable aviation, fuel and airspace modernisation. This will help meet the UK's net zero targets and supports the government's mission to make Britain a clean energy superpower. Airport expansion will need to be considered carefully alongside these commitments.
Speaker, I'm grateful to you for granting this urgent question, and I thank the Minister for their response. It is vital that Parliament is not sidelined when government forms new policy, especially policies that could wreck our climate ambitions. Does the Secretary of State understand that expanding London's airports and building a third runway at Heathrow would be vastly irresponsible in the midst of approaching climate breakdown, literally flying in the face of the Climate Change Committee's advice? How can ministers even be considering this when 2024 was the year we went over 1.5 degrees warming, the limit we're committed to not breaking in the Paris Climate Agreement? How can ministers see catastrophic wildfires in California, deadly floods in Spain last year, and devastating floods this year in the UK and still pursue a wrong policy? During yesterday's Environmental Audit Committee, the Secretary of State for Energy Security and Net Zero stated that any aviation expansion must be justified within carbon budgets. Can the Minister explain why we are hearing trailed announcements of multiple airport expansions exactly in the month before new advice from the Climate Change Committee is delivered? The committee could not have been clearer in previous reports that without a framework to manage aviation demand, we should not expand airports. Has the Minister seen the research from the New Economics Foundation estimating that approving airport expansion plans for Heathrow, Gatwick and Luton airports alone will serve to cancel out the carbon savings of the government's Clean Power Action Plan? The government's arguments I've seen appear to rest on the idea that there are new technologies ready to go that will cut carbon emissions and allow large airport expansions. But in reality, does the Minister accept that these innovations, many of which are still not ready for commercial use, cannot be relied on? Will the Minister act in line with the science and our climate commitments and do the responsible thing and rule out a reckless airport expansion policy?
Minister.
Well, I can thank the honourable member for a follow-up. There is always a trade-off to be had if an application does come forward, or applications do come forward, between noise, carbon and growing our economy. We recognise that Heathrow has operated at over 95% capacity for most of the past 2 decades, which has presented limited opportunities for growth in route networks and passenger numbers. We live in an interconnected world, Mr Speaker, where people want to visit their family members and do business across our planet. And we have moved faster in this government in the first 66 months than the last government did in 14 years, introducing the SAF mandate that 2% of all fuel sourced from January the 1st this year has to come from a renewable source. And I have to say to the honourable member, where was she when we introduced that in this House? One of the most forward-thinking, sustainable measures that we've brought to this place. And in the next few months, Mr Speaker, as part of His Majesty's legislative agenda, we will be introducing the revenue certainty mechanism to create a world-class SAF industry right here in the UK. So I hope to see her on those benches supporting government as it cleans up our transport sector, our economy as a whole and our aviation sector.
Chair of the Select Committee, Ruth.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A third runway at Heathrow has significant implications for UK-wide growth, on our carbon commitments, on the 600,000 people who will live in the new 54 decibel corridor of significant noise, as well as air pollution. Doesn't the Minister agree with me that an announcement like this really should be made in the context of a national aviation strategy? And if he does, when are we going to see it?
Minister.
Well, I thank the Chair of the Transport Select Committee for her question. And the Airport National Planning Framework hasn't been updated under the last government for some time, and we will shortly, very shortly, bring proposals forward to do that as part of our package. While there is no development consent application for Heathrow currently, we've been clear that expansion proposals there would need to demonstrate that they contribute to economic growth, that are compatible with our climate change targets, meet the strict environmental standards of air quality and noise pollution. The 4 tests, Mr Speaker.
Shadow Secretary of State Gareth.
Mr Speaker, in recent days we've heard that the Chancellor is about to announce her support for airport expansion at Luton, Gatwick and Heathrow. His Majesty's opposition are supportive of airport expansion because we recognise the huge economic benefits that would bring. In the case of Luton and Gatwick, the planning processes, as the Minister has just said, are well underway. But the situation at Heathrow is rather different. A completed third runway at Heathrow would undoubtedly bring economic benefits which we would support. But delivering it will not be straightforward because there are major logistical barriers to its construction. These include, but are not limited to, hundreds of thousands of additional people being brought onto Heathrow's flight path, the potential for significant disruption to the M25 and M4, which could harm the economy for years to come, the fact that a large incinerator is in the way and would have to be demolished, and the need to address local concerns around noise and air pollution. But the uncertainties don't end there, Mr Speaker, because to date Heathrow has not applied for a development consent order, nor have they even confirmed that they intend to do so. All of this leaves the Minister with many questions to answer. What assessment has he made of the impact of building a third runway on the M25 and M4, 2 of the busiest motorways in Europe? How certain is he that any proposed plan will have the support of affected communities? What is the estimated cost and who will pay, not just for the runway construction, but for the massive additional work that will need to be done, amongst other things, the rerouting of motorways, demolishing the incinerator and rebuilding it elsewhere? And perhaps most importantly, what assurances can he provide that there will actually be an application for a development consent order? Mr Speaker, I sincerely hope that the Minister can answer these questions today, because if not, it will be clear that this is not a serious policy, but rather a panicked and rushed attempt by the Chancellor of the Exchequer to distract attention from the state of the economy, which is currently withering under this floundering Labour government.
Minister.
Well, the brass neck. The last government crashed the economy, sending mortgages through the roof, and called an early election to avoid having to make difficult decisions. And my right honourable friend agree that the transport policy should be enabling growth as a priority in this country so that we can bring about change that the British people voted for. 14 years, a government that had become so sclerotic in aviation and maritime as part of my brief that no decisions were brought forward on decarbonising the maritime sector, decarbonising the aviation sector, and making the difficult decisions that this country needs. There is no, as the honourable member does say rightly, there is no development consent order before us at the moment, and that's a matter for Heathrow or a related party to bring forward.
McDonnell.
For me and you, Mr. Speaker, there's more than an element of déjà vu on this debate, isn't there? Although the Minister has said that what we've heard is speculative, I have to say the Chancellor's statements seem to be more authoritative than that. And could I ask, therefore, has the Department provided her with an assessment, for example, of where the 8,000 to 10,000 people in my constituency who will have their homes demolished or rendered unlivable will live if the Heathrow expansion goes ahead? Has he also mapped out for the Chancellor the flight paths of the additional 250,000 planes flying over the homes of people in those marginal seats of Uxbridge and Watford and Harrow and elsewhere? And also, has he advised the Chancellor on some of the figures that have been bandied about the economic benefits, which seems to derive from the Airport Commission's figures that are out of date, but his own department rubbished very thoroughly only in recent years?
Minister.
Well, I say to the honourable member, he is a doughty campaigner for his constituents, but there is no DCO at the moment, so we don't know the impact. That will be a matter for Heathrow or a third party to bring forward. I would like to hear a more full-throated support for our airspace modernisation plan, which will improve resilience and capacity and flexibility when it comes to aircraft noise over affected communities. And when it comes to growth, my own constituency, Mr. Speaker, as you well know, has seen £2 billion worth of the Manchester Mix scheme at Manchester Airport, the development of the Hook Group, the development of the most advanced Amazon's fulfilment centre on the planet. We know that aviation brings growth and jobs, and we know there's a trade-off to be had, and we will have those conversations if a development consent order is brought before us.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Kohler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Minister gave an admirably Delphic but still disappointing answer. Whilst we must grow the economy, we must not do so at the expense of the environment. Expanding Heathrow, Gatwick and Luton airports will drive, fly even a coach and horses through our climate commitments, adding 92 million tonnes of carbon dioxide to our carbon footprint by 2050. And do not just take my word for it. The Mayor of London and his previous Deputy Mayor for Transport, the Environment Secretary, the Chief Secretary of the Treasury and the Prime Minister have all previously been opposed, as is the Energy and Net Zero Secretary. So can I ask the Minister 3 questions? 1, why has his boss, the former London Deputy Mayor for Transport, now changed her mind? 2, how can the government reconcile this massive growth in carbon emissions with our climate commitments? And 3, why, if the government is looking to grow our economy, isn't the government re-engaging meaningfully with Europe by negotiating a customs union?
Minister.
Oh, so that last one floored me ever so slightly. Delphic, he says, ambiguous and obscure, slightly like Liberal Democrat policies when it comes to aviation. One foot in, 1 foot out, sort of shake it all about, saying one thing to one community under a flight path, saying another thing about jobs to another community on the flight path. Whatever I say will end up on the focus one thing, but you can't have it both ways. You can't support growth, you can't support jobs, you can't support airspace modernisation, you can't support sustainable aviation fuels, and then go to your constituents and say, look what this terrible government is doing. We have a firm plan for aviation in this country, and we're going to carry it out.
Andy Slaughter. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. Would the Minister agree that plans for the third runway have gone cold over the past decade since the airport commission? As he says, there isn't even an application for a development consent order. Would he agree with me that there's no chance of there being spades in the ground in this Parliament? And if there were, that's when the problems really start.
Minister.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, but for too long, on too many issues, this nation has just not made the tough decisions. When it's come to airport expansion, when it's come to a world-class aviation sector admired across the world, and when it comes to actually decarbonising our sector as well, we are making huge progress, more in the first 6 months than the last 14 years of the government's opposite. So we will continue on our mission of renewing the National Airport Strategy, looking at development consent orders as they are currently live. That's a quasi-judicial matter. I can't comment on Luton and Gatwick as members know, and we will wait to see if Heathrow do bring a development consent order forward, or one of their related parties.
Sir Roger Gale.
Deputy Speaker, thank you. Manston Airport in Kent, in my constituency, has been fallow and the subject of legal action for far too long, but that's happily now behind us. We hope and expect that within the next few weeks there will be announcements concerning the funding that will lead to the development of a state-of-the-art net zero carbon airport in Kent. Manston at the moment doesn't appear to feature in the government's plans. So can the Secretary of State assure me that his eye is on that ball and that that will become part of the growth programme?
Minister.
Well, can I thank the honourable member for his question? I spoke to him about Manston both in opposition and in government as well. So we again wait to see what will be brought forward there, but it could be an exciting opportunity, particularly for cargo, where we could have zero-emission vessels shipping its content into the port of London in the future. So we will wait and see whether they come with a development consent order, and we will judge it on its merits.
Rupa.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Last time that this question of Heathrow was voted on, I'm old enough to have been there, we, in the spirit of Gordon Brown and the tests over the euro, applied our own on capacity, carbon commitments, minimising noise and environmental impact and benefiting the whole of the UK. Can the Minister tell me whether these still apply? Very sensible tests. And can he add another one about cost to the public purse and deliverability for my constituents who will be the most affected and want a better, not a bigger Heathrow?
Well, I thank the honourable member for the question. I have to re-emphasise there is no development consent order for Heathrow at the moment, but we know that for all aviation and for all airports, surface access is absolutely essential. The public transport penetration within an hour is key to the markets that airports can actually get across the planet and support their growth. We know that we have a world-class transport system here in the South East, but as a part of any development consent order, Heathrow or its related parties will have to prove about how we can get new people to that site going forward in the future.
Munira Wilson.
Madam Deputy Speaker, if, as we expect, the Chancellor announces her support tomorrow for a third runway at Heathrow, not only is this a massive U-turn on the Prime Minister's previous position, it is patently clear that a third runway will fail all of Labour's 4 tests on growth across our regions, on climate, on air and noise pollution. The economic and environmental cases are in tatters, and no airlines want to foot the bill for a third runway. So will the Minister concede that any announcement by the Chancellor is simply virtue signalling for a Chancellor in search of growth where she's not going to achieve it and damage our environment and our communities at the same time?
Minister.
Well, firstly, I support the Chancellor's pursuit of growth. Too long we have been stagnant, and we know that this is an area that can provide growth. I've seen it in my own constituencies, I've pointed out. But where was the honourable member when we talked about sustainable aviation fuels? Where was the honourable member when we committed £63 million to the Advanced Fuel Fund to help the SAF industry grow in this country? And we've announced £1 billion to the Aeronautical Technical Institute to look at zero-emission flight. Wouldn't it be great one day in the future a minister can stand here and say that all internal UK flights will be zero-emission? I want to leave whoever my successor is the opportunity to hopefully say that within the next decade.
Deirdre Costigan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Many of my constituents in Ealing Southall work at Heathrow or in its supply chain and will welcome the good quality, well-paid jobs airport expansion will bring. However, I have other constituents who worry about the environmental impact of any expansion. In taking any decision on this matter, will the Minister ensure he balances the need for growth and for good quality local jobs against the need to minimise both air pollution and noise pollution?
Madam Deputy Speaker, what a terrific question. There is a trade-off always between hard... Well, it absolutely hits the mark that there's a trade-off between noise, carbon and growing our economy for our people. Airports do create well-paid, high-paid, trade-unionised jobs, not just with the aircraft that come in and out, but the ground handling services that come with them as well. And we know that aviation communities are much better off because of the jobs that are created with them. And we have to balance all that trade-off in the years ahead as we make the tough decisions we need to grow our economy.
David Simmons.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I would remind the Minister that sustainable aviation fuel is not an answer to air quality, which is the main reason why attempted expansion at Heathrow has failed in the past. It's also the reason for the Chancellor's trenchant opposition to the expansion of Leeds Bradford Airport, which affects her constituency. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, having been around since the days of the Terminal 5 planning inquiry, it's very clear that the business case for Heathrow expansion rests on imposing very significant costs on taxpayers through expecting the taxpayer to foot the cost of the impact on the M4, the M25, the loss of an incinerator that provides waste to energy for many local authorities. So can the Minister assure the House that any DCO, when it comes forward for Heathrow, will be subject to no less rigour and no less consultation than those that have been brought forward in the past?
Well, I can assure the honourable gentleman on that. I would just say, in addition to SAF, which was stuck in the muck under the last Labour government, waiting for years for announcements, that we've done more in 6 months than 14 years under the last administration. And we are investing in cleaning up current aviation fuel through our contrail technology and funding of that as well, so that the air people breathe is always as clean as we possibly can make it.
Danny Beales.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In the spirit of cross-party collaboration, I'd like to praise the shadow spokesperson for expertly outlining some of the logistical challenges of Heathrow expansion. I must say, however, it's a surprise and a shame that the party opposite didn't answer those questions before voting for expansion in 2018 when in government. But moving forward to solve and address these very serious issues, does the Minister agree with me that any future application for Heathrow expansion, which we don't yet have, must address those key questions, must look at those logistical challenges and address the very real issue of how expansion is compatible with our climate commitments and with local concerns over air quality, pollution, noise and congestion?
Minister.
The honourable member is exactly right. Our 4 tests remain. They have to be passed. But we are, again, speculating that a development consent order will come before us. But I am sure, as a doughty campaigner for his constituents, he will make his voice heard.
Sarah Olney.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The economic benefits of the expansion of London airports remain unproven. In regards to Heathrow, the Department for Transport's updated appraisal report show that the net present value of a third runway ranges from just £3.3 billion to minus £2.2 billion, while Heathrow's own finances are of severe concern due to the significant debt that they've incurred. So can the Minister tell me what new economic analysis has the government considered that now makes a third runway at Heathrow viable when considered alongside its commitments on climate, noise and air quality?
Minister.
Well, I say to the honourable member what I said earlier, that capacity in London is at 76% on average, 95% at Gatwick and Heathrow, and what is the Liberal Democrat answer to that? Do we not want people to fly across the world, bang the drum for British business? Do we not want them to visit their friends and their family? Are they for constraining people flying? I think there's a lot of questions, but no answers for members on those benches opposite.
Clive Efford.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I voted against the framework for the Heathrow Airport in 2018, and I did so because it didn't satisfy me that the legislation before us was going to deal with air quality, noise, climate change and surface access issues. Does my honourable friend agree with me that if we're going to go ahead with a third runway at Heathrow, we've got to satisfy ourselves in this House that those issues have been addressed and they cannot be set aside by the developers once they've got permission to go ahead?
The honourable gentleman is exactly right. Those tests do have to be met, and they have to be met through the development consent order. Just for the record, I voted for the framework in 2018 because I did at the time think it passed those tests.
Sir Alex Shelbrooke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As I know will be true for his fellow Minister, the Honourable Member for Wakefield and Rothwell, many of my constituents in Wetherby and Easingwold use Leeds Bradford Airport. And for years, I've wanted to see an expansion of Heathrow so that morning flights can come down to Heathrow Airport, allowing transatlantic flights to be boarded in Yorkshire. So can I urge the Minister that when considering the expansion of Heathrow, he always gives firm attention to the regional airports, especially Leeds Bradford Airport in Yorkshire, that would allow the economy to grow significantly if people could check in Leeds and get off in New York?
I can't agree more with the honourable member, and it pains me to say it. We have 5 great northern runways stretching from John Lennon, Manchester, Leeds, Bradford and Newcastle, and we should be focusing on regional connectivity in particular. I would say on Leeds Bradford, my recollection is because of the lack of decision making by the last government, confidence was lost there around its development. Let's see if we can get a framework where we can improve the connectivity for the people of Leeds, Bradford and my honourable friend's constituency of Wakefield.
Dr Scott Arthur.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I came to London yesterday by rail as usual, and I have to say that both Lumo and LNER are doing a fantastic job getting people out of planes between Edinburgh and London and into trains. And I always like to talk about trains, but I am concerned, Madam Deputy Speaker, that any increase in air capacity is going to take people out of the train and help them make less sustainable transport options. So can the Minister commit to speaking with the Minister of Rail to understand any impacts on that service regarding airport expansion? Thank you.
Well, I think the honourable member is exactly right. We have to join up the modes of transport. We've had a broken transport system for 14 years with complete underinvestment, and whether it's rail connectivity to Glasgow, what will happen with the development consent order in terms of Heathrow coming forward, or just getting northern trains working across the north of England to link up Leeds, Bradford, Liverpool and Manchester and Newcastle will be a key start about improving jobs and growth at those airports.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In order to meet the problems of increasing demands for flights, what is the government doing to improve rail connections with Western Europe, including direct trains to Germany as well as Holland?
Minister.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question. I think fixing the problems of Eurostar, we're seeing other developers coming into that market, and we're seeing the European Union colleagues actually doing overnight long-distance trains, which is reducing the need for aviation across the continent and reducing carbon. We should be ambitious as a country that we can tap into that network, and he's right in this matter.
Siân Wara.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And Newcastle International Airport tell me that Heathrow expansion will mean increased access to global businesses, global markets for North East businesses, new destinations for North East tourists, and easier access to our brilliant North East universities for students from around the world. So more broadly, would the Minister agree with me that given that air travel's 5% of emissions is dwarfed by road travel, that the important work that his department is doing to promote electric vehicles and that the Department of Energy is doing on the decarbonisation of the electricity network is absolutely fundamental to demonstrating to my constituents that addressing climate change is not about saying no to travel and transport, but saying yes to an economy that works for people and the planet.
Minister.
Well, we have made tough decisions, my honourable friend, about the phase-out of internal combustion engines up to 2030. I visited Newcastle Airport and saw what a wonderful operation it is, and producing solar energy as well to power the operation there. We need better connectivity between Newcastle and here in London. I have raised that with carriers, because if we're going to develop our offshore wind and carbon capture and green energy technology, that needs to be linked up, and with the cruise industry, Newcastle Airport and the great coast up there that provides so many jobs and services and industries for people across our nation.
Sir Julian Lewis.
I've been enjoying the Minister's lively presentation, but then I don't live under a potential new flight path. Is the government consulting with its own backbenchers about the possibility of aviation and airport expansion versus net zero? And if it is, will it be advising them to clean up what they've said on this subject on the internet before it's hoovered up by the opposition in preparation for the next general election?
Minister.
Well, there's been a lot of AI news in the in the press today. I'd say gently to the honourable gentleman, I grew up under a flight path in Wythenshawe and Sale East, my hometown. I grew up under the BA 111s, the Tridents, the Concorde, the Guppies. I see my honourable friend for Manchester is agreeing with me. I remember how dirty, noisy and smelly those planes were. Technology has gone leaps and bounds forward, and the noise envelopes around most of our airports have reduced considerably, and we hope through our investments to improve the technology going forward in this government and the next.
Nick Smith.
Deputy Speaker, the Sunday Times this weekend featured a great cartoon by Morton Morland showing the Prime Minister, Chancellor and the Environment Secretary tearing up a Whitehall office looking for the growth lever. Now, I'm a supporter of the Welsh Freeports programme and airport expansion, where there is environmental mitigation. So can the Minister please say more about the government's sustainable aviation plans and the use of low-carbon tech to help economic growth?
Minister.
Well, can I thank the honourable member for his question and his support for our growth at our ports, because that includes our maritime ports as well. At £63 million in advanced fuel fund, £1 billion to the ATI to look at net zero emissions. We have introduced already, the first act out of the gate of this government almost was to introduce the SAF mandate that 2% of all fuel this year came into force on January the 1st will have to be from a sustainable source, and we will shortly be legislating on the revenue certainty mechanism to kickstart the SAF industry in the UK. This government could not have done more in the 6 months that it's had in office.
Monica Harding.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I note the Minister didn't mention noise pollution in his initial statement, but as he grew up under a flight path, I hope he enjoyed the noise. Currently, in my constituency of East Walton, 8 routes pass over, sometimes after midnight, and my constituents struggle with the level of noise. One said that it was like having an uninvited dinner guest every night. It not only disturbs sleep, but it has a profound health implication as well. So with this in mind, will the Minister be ignoring the health impacts of a third runway?
Minister.
Well, I can't comment on the third runway because there's no development consent order before us, but she does make an extraordinarily valid point about noise, and that's why I'd say to benches opposite, get behind us on airspace modernisation, support it. We have an analogue system in a digital age that is closer designed for the days when Yuri Gagarin went into space than it is for today, and we can give people more choice under flight paths in the future by differentiation if we have a better system of airspace modernisation. modernisation.
Chris Vince.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My local airport, Stansted, is a huge employer for residents in my constituency of Harlow, and it has absolutely led the way in developing sustainable aviation fuel. Does the Minister agree with me that sustainable aviation fuel is vital to achieve our decarbonisation targets?
Minister.
Sustainable aviation fuel is absolutely vital to meet our climate targets, and I commend the Manchester Airport Group, which includes Stansted, East Midlands and Manchester in my own constituency, on the work that they are doing to decarbonise. They are ahead of the game. They fly 1 in 7 people, 1 in 6 people in and out of the UK. So that is huge. That's huge emissions reductions when they get it right.
Andrew Murison.
Madam Deputy Speaker, does the Minister agree with me that one of the many benefits of a third runway at Heathrow would be that it would require the removal of one of the largest waste incinerators in this country? And when this matter comes before him, will he ensure that what goes forward does not involve the reprovisioning of this monster in a densely populated area, but its deletion altogether, so that we can get to a point at which we are truly sustainable in the way that we deal with waste?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question. There is no DCO currently. If one comes forward, I'm sure he will make his voice heard on that.
Toby Perkins.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm grateful to my honourable friend for repeating what we heard at the Environmental Audit Committee from the Secretary of State for DESNES yesterday, that no plans will be approved unless they are in line with the government's environmental commitments. Now, my honourable friend can't comment on Gatwick and Luton because they have a live DCO in. He can't comment on Heathrow because they haven't got a live DCO in, which is kind of handy. So let me ask him about something that he can comment on, which is about what those changes that we're going to make in order to ensure that the any plans that come forward for airport expansion are in line with our environmental commitments. Can he explain more about what the offsets are going to be to ensure that the government's able to meet those commitments that he's confirmed they're going to do?
Well, I thank my honourable friend and thank him for his chairmanship of the Environmental Audit Committee, which I was a proud member of many years, looking at circular economy that this government now is taking forward. The government has committed to delivering greener transport, including through SAF, through airspace modernisation, for the other measures that I've laid out earlier. But that is a range of measures that I'm very proud of my front bench team. Across our department, we are decarbonising the transport sector further and faster in the first 6 months of this government than in 14 years of the last.
Christine Juddin.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Minister has made a great deal about the position of my own party on Heathrow Airport. And as he's such a fan of our focus leaflets, I'm sure he'll know from my own that I have consistently raised in this place airport noise, opposition to the expansion of Heathrow, sustainable aviation fuel and airspace management. But can he tell me how he is going to make the airspace management plan fit with any forthcoming emissions and capacity management framework, which we've yet to hear from this government and which our benches here have included as one of the things that we think is vital to the future sustainability of the air transport industry in this country?
Minister.
Well, I'm generally very grateful for the support of the members on those benches for airspace modernisation. I am genuinely. It's complicated, it's difficult. You know, we're throwing our hat over the world trying to reach this. It's going to be easier to do in certain parts of our country than others, but we've already taken action on that. We've set up airspace modernisation, design service. We're bringing the best and the brightest together. If we can make the planes fly in a straight line, we will use less carbon. It's the lowest of low-hanging fruit when it comes to carbon reduction in the aviation sector, and we're moving at pace on it.
Jo White.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome this government's commitment to the aviation sector? The closure of Doncaster Airport on the 30th of December 2022 with a loss of 800 jobs and the smoothest access to flights in the country was devastating. The reopening of the airport has been a long-fought campaign and an ambition that has the backing of my constituents in Bassetlaw. And I know they'll be saying today, bring the flights and the infrastructure to our area. Will the Minister give his support and put his shoulder to our campaign?
Minister.
Without a doubt. People are proud of their airports. You know, mine was 80 years old a few years ago. I saw people turn out in droves about the proud nature of aviation in this country, and I felt sorry for the people of Doncaster, Sheffield and the environs when it lost its airport, but I have to commend the mayor there, the mayor of the council and the local MPs who've lobbied me relentlessly on this matter, and I know the council now has a deal with the operator and the first flight took off there again very recently, so I wish them every luck with it and they will have my full backing to do what needs to be done.
Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Like my right honourable friend from Wetherby and others, can I focus on the role of our regional airports? And surely the Minister would agree that expansion of some of them could actually help the government's growth agenda and also provide a boost to local economies. And many of our regional airports with improved rail connections could actually serve travellers to and from London, and the work that would be involved could actually be achieved long before a DCO for Heathrow could be concluded.
Well, I thank the honourable member, and I think airports near him will have a key part to play in getting workers across our nation around the decarbonisation agenda and the sustainable fuels, because I think Immingham sits within his constituency, so that will be absolutely key to the UK's plans to decarbonise our economy. But good rail connectivity, good airports. Good airports do rely, it's a market within the private sector. Planes want to go to particular places, but if we can expand our economy and grow our economy across all our regions, as we hope to do so, I hope this will be a golden age for all our airports.
Jonathan Brash.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My right honourable friend, the member for Hayes and Harlington, was correct when he said that this feels like déjà vu. Here we are again debating huge transport infrastructure expansion in the southeast of England when constituents right across this country, and especially in the northeast, think, what about us? Does the Minister agree with me that if expanding transport infrastructure in this country is the key to growth, then that growth must happen everywhere?
Well, I agree with the honourable members. I said to him myself, I think airports are making the right decisions around improving the airspace, improving their connectivity through surface access, all have the potential to grow, like mine has grown exponentially in the next few years. So I urge members to get behind their airports, support them, support the growth agenda and support the decarbonisation agenda at those airports as well.
Adrian Ramsey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Globally, half of aviation emissions are as a result of flights taken by the wealthiest 1%, while in the UK, 70% of flights are taken by the richest 15%. So isn't expanding aviation capacity a matter of fairness in that it will facilitate the very richest who are already frequent flyers to be able to fly more, while the impacts in terms of noise, carbon emissions and air pollution will be affected on the most ordinary people in society, including the poorest at home and around the world?
Well, I'll gently say to the honourable member again, you know, I think Woody Allen said 80% of success in life is turning up. Where were you when we were introducing the sustainable aviation mandate into this House? I hope you'll be here when we introduce the revenue support mechanism in the months ahead, that we decarbonise our aviation sector. I think people have the right to go on holiday at least once a year. I think they have the right to do business across the planet. I think they have the right to visit friends and family. I'm not sure what your policies are. If you want to send them to me, I'll put them on one of my Labour roses.
Sally Jameson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And following on from the honourable member for Bassett Law, does the Minister agree with me that it's important that we also support regional airports in the north, including the reopening of Doncaster Airport, which is supported by all of my neighbouring parliamentary colleagues? And we are working with the honourable member for Doncaster East and the Isle of Acton, Doncaster Council and the South Yorkshire Mayoral Combined Authority to ensure we get this critical piece of transport infrastructure back, because the growth agenda will only be a success if places like Doncaster feel it too. people of Doncaster and South Yorkshire can take off once again.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I have to say that the honourable member is so tenacious in this matter. I sometimes go pale when I meet her in the division lobbies, because every day she asks after it. She's such a campaigner on this matter. I saw her go around party conference lobbying industry and airlines to do what her local constituents sent her to Parliament to do, and to try and come up with a solution at her local airport. I can only commend her tenacity to this House.
John Milne.
Deputy Speaker, will the Minister confirm, if airport expansion is to go ahead, what compensating measures the Government will take to ensure carbon budgets are adhered to, because they must have been already agreed upon by now?
Minister.
Can I thank the honourable member for his considered approach in all these matters, and I was pleased to receive him in the ministry the other day to talk about particular constituency issues as it related to Gatwick. We don't have a development consent order, but noise and pollution are the tests to meet our climate commitments, and they will remain the tests, and it will be up to the honourable member, the chair of the Transport Committee, members across this House to hold government's feet to the fire on this matter.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The reopening of Blackpool Airport for commercial flights is a top priority of my constituents, something I have raised with the Minister before. Does he agree with me that we need to work with our regional airports like Blackpool to deliver the growth and the jobs we need in places like Blackpool that have been forgotten about by the previous government over 14 years?
Minister.
Well, what a breath of fresh air the honourable member was in his by-election and now on these benches campaigning for his airport in Blackpool. I'm really looking forward to my night out there and visiting the airport, and I hope that comes with fish and chips on the prom as well.
Alison Bennett.
Deputy Speaker. On the question of Heathrow expansion, it feels a little bit like it's the Schrodinger's cat of expansion at the moment, because it's both happening and not happening, depending on what your perspective is today. I also realise that the Minister doesn't want to be tempted on commenting on Gatwick because it's a live DCA process. So instead, given that the Shadow Minister and the Minister have both asserted that growth is an inevitable consequence of airport expansion, can I ask him what evidence he has to support that assertion?
Minister.
Well, thank you to the honourable member for the question, but I don't think I'll take any lectures from members on those benches about sitting on the fence. It's the politics of licking your finger and putting it in the air and seeing which way the wind's blowing until you put it on a leaflet. There is no development consent order for Heathrow yet. I'm sure she will have her opportunities to raise her concerns at that time in this place.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I just say I cannot agree more with the Minister when he points out that any airport expansion has to be part of the overall picture of upgrading Britain's broken transport networks. Bracknell sits on the Reading to Waterloo train line, passing through Feltham, just south of Heathrow, but journey times on the line haven't improved since the 70s, and there's no direct connection to Heathrow. So can the Minister assure me that any plans to upgrade airports will be part of this overall picture of an integrated plan?
The honourable member is exactly right. I mean, I'm not usually quite so divisive at the dispatch box, but we inherited such a broken system. It's almost untrue, the things that we are finding out and the sclerotic nature of the last government. My honourable friend here, the Minister for Roads, has invested £1.6 billion in potholes. My honourable member, the member for Wakefield and the member for buses, has invested £1 billion in buses. We are moving fast and we are fixing things, and we are delivering.
Lisa Smart. Thank you very much.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as a fellow Greater Manchester MP, the Minister will undoubtedly know that Manchester Airport welcomed 30 million passengers through its doors last year. He'll also know that 84% of those came to and from the airport by car. He will rightly acknowledge that there are concerns, valid concerns across the House today about the impact of that airport expansion has on carbon emissions, and that the carbon footprint of Manchester Airport is only partly coming from air travel itself. A lot of it comes from road travel. What update can the Minister give my constituents from Hazel Grove about surface access improvements at Manchester Airport so they can get to and from the airport, whether as passengers or to work, by bus or by train?
Minister.
Well, the party opposite built a road and it just floods all the time. So maybe we can start with dealing for that. She's right to say Manchester Airport's in my constituency. My constituency is the most visited in the north of England. In fact, 30 million people came to my constituency alone in the last year. They may not have stayed as long as I would have liked them to do, but it's an incredible journey that airport has been on, and it's an incredible decarbonisation journey that's been on, and I hope to meet with them shortly to continue that journey with them.
Lawrence Turner.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's right that in this debate we all seek to champion our local and regional airports, including Birmingham International, but the reality is that no other airport is a serious rival to the long-haul hub capacity that Heathrow provides. Its exhaustion of that capacity is a block on growth in every region of the UK. Does the Minister agree that the redirection of that pent-up demand to Schiphol and to Dubai is no good for the national accounts, and it is no good for the environment either?
Yes.
Minister.
Well, the Honourable Gentleman is absolutely right. He's a very good campaigner for his local airport and his public service obligation that goes out of that airport as well. But not making these tough decisions, it doesn't mean there's no carbon. It means customers are voting with their feet and they're going to Schiphol or they're going to Frankfurt or they're going to Charles de Gaulle to hub out to their destinations. So you've got to look at it in the round when you are looking at decarbonising the UK aviation sector.
Caroline Volan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Given the hugely contradictory evidence that expanding airport capacity will boost GDP growth, and there is contradictory evidence, can the Minister explain how the Government justifies prioritising airport expansion over a much-needed and substantial investment in green travel and public transport, which would benefit the economy in the long term and benefit a far wider population of this country than the very small group of wealthy frequent flyers who will benefit from airport expansion?
Deirdre.
Well, I'm hearing that members sort of are across those benches against wealthy people and against our constituents, in some cases, flying. There is no bigger champion in this House, except for my honourable friend from Wakefield, for active travel. And, you know, I hope to do lots more around ports and airports when it comes to that matter. All people, regardless of their income, should have a choice about how they got around. When we've had a broken system over the last 14 years, people have no choice. Now they are getting better buses, their potholes are fixed, and we're investing more in active travel than we ever have done.
Mark Ferguson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend, the member for Birmingham Northfield, has made an excellent point about hub airports. For example, my local airport in Newcastle, at the moment, there are 19 flights between Newcastle and Heathrow, but there are 30 a week between Newcastle and Amsterdam. Now, I dare say some people from the North East may be wishing to sample the unique delights of Amsterdam, but it's certainly the case that some of them will be using Amsterdam as a hub airport instead of Heathrow. That's bad for our economy, it's bad for passengers, and because it's further away than Heathrow, it's bad for the environment too. Isn't it right that we build hub capacity in this country because it's the best thing to do environmentally?
Minister.
I also understand that you can have a good old party from the port of Tyne on the ferry to Amsterdam. I don't know if he's taking that, but the honourable member is exactly right. If we're not investing in a hub airport in the UK, then people are going point to point outside the UK to transfer and go to the places they want. That's just, in fact, a worse carbon emission than us taking responsibility for the decisions we need to make to decarbonise our aviation sector.
Sammy Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I welcome the support that the Minister has given to the Chancellor today in this House, because he has made it quite clear that if the speculation turns into reality, where he will stand in this issue. And it is important, given the need for hub airports to export our goods, to make the business links, and also to give people the personal freedom to travel across the world. But is he concerned with me that, given the obsession of the Energy Secretary with net zero, with the large number of people in this House who seem to be more concerned about the long-term predictions uncertain as they may be about climate, rather than the immediate needs of growth and jobs in this economy, and also the potential for lengthy court battles because of the statutory commitments that we have to CO2 reductions, that no investor is going to look at these kinds of projects and will continue to look at hub airports in the rest of Europe.
Minister.
I thank the honourable member. I know he's a campaigner and I keep a close eye on all matters of connectivity to Northern Ireland as well. But investor confidence in aviation is huge, and it's queuing up and it's looking for the opportunities. But we've got to make sure those opportunities come with jobs, they come with growth, but they also come that they are clean and they decarbonise our sector as well. So I say stick with the plan. We will decarbonise the grid, we will decarbonise our UK economy, but we can grow it at the same time. The two things are not contradictory.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Does the Minister agree that it would be irresponsible to kick the can down the runway on airport expansion and indeed other major infrastructure when this country is desperate for growth and needs a government willing to take the tough decisions to overcome the blockers and get things built in the national interest and in the interests of citizens all around our country?
Minister.
I cannot agree more. This government's defined mission will be of growth, and the aviation sector is one sector that we are looking at where we can grow this economy because it provides the connectivity, the high-skilled jobs, the trade unionised jobs that support families and careers right across our country.
Vera Hobhouse.
Deputy Speaker. Before the Minister is going to ask me where I was during the SAF debate, I was here. 22% of SAF by 2040, that is still 78% of fossil fuel in aircraft fuel, an awful lot. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, my Bath constituents are impacted by Bristol Airport expansion, and I meet regularly with my local group of Stop Airport expansion, and what they want to know is what impact assessment has been made of the cumulative effect of the additional carbon emissions which will be created by all proposed airport expansion plans taken together?
Minister.
Right. I thank the honourable member. She's actually right. And well done for being there during the SAF debate and supporting government in that. You can't, at the moment, the technology doesn't exist to fully decarbonise aviation. We are looking at hydrogen. We've got the Advanced Fuels Fund. We're investing £1 billion into the ATI. But as the Prime Minister announced recently when he went to Merseyside, we are investing billions into carbon capture and technology to offset those emissions, because that's what we're going to have to do in the near future. But I envisage one day, where we will get to a point where we will have aircraft in our skies, particularly internally in the UK, with zero emissions coming out of their tailpipes.
Mark Stewards.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome this government's commitment to growth? Can I also welcome their commitment to take the difficult decisions required to generate it? Now, while we know that any conversations about a third runway will focus on the south, I'd like to ask about the north. So can I ask the Minister, in my capacity as chair of the APPG for Yorkshire and North Lincolnshire, what's going to be done if this project is approved to ensure that all regions benefit from the proceeds of growth generated from this agreement?
Minister.
Well, I'm grateful for the honourable member for the question, and he's even from this Lancastrian for his chairmanship of the APPG for Yorkshire as well. I will say a couple of things. We have 5 great northern runways. We need to begin to improve their capacity and their connectivity. I think that is key to regional economic growth. And hopefully, whoever comes forward with the DCO for Heathrow, they have, as they've looked in the past, about spreading the wealth and about the logistics hubs right around not just our country, but Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland as well.
Victoria Collins.
Thank you.
Madam Deputy Speaker. My local communities, including Flemstead, Margate, Wythenshawe, are already plagued by Luton Airport and very worried about the expansion. If the Minister can't answer questions of evidence of the positive impact on growth and the economy, can he at least guarantee that the Government will listen to the Government's own climate experts and have a framework in place before any airport expansion?
Minister.
Yes, is the answer. We will come forward very shortly with a policy framework. We've not had one for many years. It is more than time to update it. She is right.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I very much welcome the Minister's answers, both confident and progressive, and I must say that's encouragement for myself as the MP for Strangford. I know my constituents have expressed some concern about the impact on the environment of the potential expansion. However, it has been highlighted to me that the ability for planes to land and not have to circle is highly beneficial to the environment. Yes. So will the Minister confirm that our environmental obligations have been fully considered in any decisions that are made for the potential expansion of Heathrow? And will there be, I know the Minister is going to say yes, but I want him to say it on the record, will there be more connection, domestic connection with Belfast, international and city? Thank you so much.
Minister.
Well, the member for Strangford is such a doughty campaigner. I think he had an urgent question in the House a few weeks ago on the plane that he was on that was cancelled. Which is, well done, is all I can say. And I think that day we had a really good question and answer session around connectivity in Northern Ireland, because we have two great airports in Belfast in particular, but Derry, London Derry also, that serves the northwest there. His first question was about almost planes flying in a straight line. It's an obscure piece of policy. It's in our manifesto. It's called airspace modernisation. You can cut up to 10, 20, and in case of certain EasyJet flights, they've told me 30% of your carbon emissions by just getting the planes to go in a reasonably straight line and not circle around aviation. It introduces resilience at airports and makes the customer experience, the passenger experience, much better. And I hope those benches there will support that when it comes to this place.
Luke Taylor.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his very fulsome answers to questions earlier, so I'm now on my 7th or 8th version of my question. So on the 2 points I'd like to explore around emissions. First of all, SAF will only ever be a transitionary fuel. So what real effort is the Government making to engage with industry to develop truly zero-carbon power plants and harness our incredible industry and our companies that can take advantage of this opportunity to lead the real zero-carbon hydrogen electric power plants? And then secondly, on noise, he mentions the airspace modernisation. That will mean that some residents face greater noise frequency and impact. So does he agree with me that the answer to the first question, next generation power plants, is actually the answer to the second on noise? And please, can you give us a proper answer on what the Government is doing to take advantage?
Minister.
Great. When one is called last, that is the problem as a new member. But I think he was agile mentally on his feet there to get that in. We are investing in hydrogen and zero emission planes or technology. £1 billion to the ATI. I hope he's sat there on those benches in the months ahead when we implement the revenue certainty mechanism, so that we can kickstart a new age of SAF production in the UK, which will bring jobs and growth right across our great country.
Can I thank the Minister for his responses, and we'll allow a few moments for the front benches to swap over.